The morning sun rose over the farming colony of Nova Eden. Hae-Jin Lee stood on his front porch, watching his 16-year-old daughter, JF, tend to their small garden. The sight made him smile. This peaceful life was very different from his past, and that was exactly how he wanted it. 20 years ago, people across the galaxy had whispered his name in fear. They called him the Ghost of Saturn because his targets never saw him coming. But that was before he met his wife, before Jaya was born, and before he promised to leave that life behind. "Dad, the tomatoes are ready," Jaya called out, holding up a basket of red fruits. Her long black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and dirt smudged her cheeks. She looked just like her mother. Hae-Jin walked down the steps to help her. His movements were still smooth and quiet, a habit he couldn't break even after 15 years of farming. "Good work. These will sell well at the market tomorrow." Their home sat on the edge of New Seoul, one of the larger settlements on Nova Eden. It was a simple 2-story house with a large garden and a small barn where they kept their equipment. To their neighbors, they were just another farming family trying to make a living on this outer colony world. Inside the house, Hae-Jin prepared breakfast while Jaya cleaned up. The kitchen walls held photos of happier times. Jaya's mother, Sunhae, holding her as a baby, family picnics, and school ceremonies. Sunhae had died 10 years ago during a virus outbreak that hit the colony. Her death had made Hae-Jin even more determined to give Jaya a normal life. "Dad, can I go to the city center with Yunji after school today?" Jaya asked as she sat down to eat. "There's a new Hollywood showing at the entertainment center." Hae-Jin looked at his daughter carefully. Old habits made him want to say no. The city center was crowded, had too many blind spots, too many security risks. But he reminded himself that those thoughts belonged to his old life. "Be back before dark," he said finally, "and keep your comm unit on." Jaya's face lit up. "Thanks, Dad. You're the best." She quickly finished her breakfast and grabbed her school bag. As Hae-Jin watched her leave, his hand automatically touched the hidden panel under the kitchen counter. Behind it was a small scanner that monitored all approaching vehicles and people within a kilometer of their house, an old security measure he'd never removed. The screen showed nothing unusual, just the regular morning traffic of farmers heading to their fields. Later that morning, Hae-Jin worked in the barn, repairing their harvest drone. His hands moved skillfully with the tools, but his mind wandered to the sealed container hidden beneath the barn's floor. It contained everything from his previous life: his combat suit, weapons, and communication devices. He hadn't opened it in 15 years, but he still checked every month to make sure it was secure. A message flashed on his comm unit. It was from Commander Yoon-hee Park, one of the few people who knew his real identity. She sent him regular updates about potential threats in the sector, even though he'd asked her to stop. This message was like the others. "Sector clear. No known hostile activity. Stay safe. Ghost." Hae-Jin deleted the message. He didn't want any reminders of that life. Here he was just a farmer and a father. The ghost of Saturn was dead, and he wanted it to stay that way. But as he looked at another photo of Jaya on the barn wall, a small voice in his head whispered what he always knew. He would become the ghost again in a heartbeat if anything threatened his daughter. Some skills you never forgot, and some promises you had to be ready to break. The afternoon sun continued to shine over their peaceful farm, and Hae-Jin returned to fixing the drone. Tomorrow would be another quiet day in their simple life. At least, that's what he hoped. The supply run to New Seoul's market district should have been routine. Jia walked through the crowded streets, checking items off her shopping list. Her father had asked her to pick up some equipment parts while he fixed the irrigation system back home. The afternoon sun was starting to set, casting long shadows between the buildings. "Final stop," Jaya muttered to herself, approaching Kim's hardware store. The street was quieter here, away from the main market. She noticed 3 men walking behind her, but didn't worry. New Seoul was generally safe, and she knew basic self-defense. Her father had insisted on teaching her. Inside the store, old Mr. Kim greeted her with a smile. "The parts your father ordered are ready," he said, reaching under the counter. "Tell him I included an extra power coupling. No charge." Jaya was putting the parts in her bag when her comm unit buzzed. It was a message from her father. "Storm warning. Come home soon." She looked outside. The sky was clear. Something wasn't right. Her father never sent unnecessary messages. The three men from the street entered the store. They wore simple clothes, but Jia noticed they moved too smoothly, too purposefully. Mr. Kim seemed to sense something too. His smile disappeared. "Closing time," one of the men announced. His accent wasn't local. He locked the door and pulled down the shutters. Jaya moved fast, just like her father had taught her. She threw her heavy bag at the nearest man and ran for the back door. She heard Mr. Kim shout and something crash. Her hands shook as she punched in an emergency code on her comm unit. She made it to the alley behind the store, but two more people were waiting there. A woman in a dark jacket raised some kind of weapon. Jia felt a sting in her neck, and her legs got weak. As she fell, she pressed the final button on her comm unit. Her father had told her never to use it unless she was in real danger. The woman caught her before she hit the ground. "Target secured," she said to someone Jaya couldn't see. "The old man." "No witnesses," a male voice replied. "But we made it look like a robbery." Jaya tried to fight the darkness creeping into her vision. She heard more voices, felt herself being carried. They put her in what felt like a vehicle. "Be careful with her," the woman said. "The boss wants her unharmed. She's our ticket to getting what we want from this colony." Back in the hardware store, Mr. Kim lay very still on the floor. The store's security camera had caught everything. Its feed went directly to the colony's central security office and to one other place, a hidden server in He-Jin Lee's barn. He-Jin was fixing the irrigation pipe when his emergency system activated. His old military training kicked in instantly. The barn's hidden screen showed him the security feed from Kim's hardware. He watched in cold silence as the scene unfolded. The men were professionals, but they had made two huge mistakes. First, they hadn't found Jaya's emergency beacon, which was now broadcasting her location to both her father's systems and certain classified GDF channels. Second, and far more serious, they had no idea who Jaya's father really was. He-Jin walked calmly to the barn's hidden storage unit. His hands didn't shake as he entered the code. Inside the container, his combat suit looked exactly as it had 15 years ago. Next to it lay an array of weapons that had helped build his legend. "I'm sorry, Sunhai," he whispered to his wife's memory as he reached for the suit. "I know we wanted a different life for her, but I'm going to bring our daughter home." The ghost of Saturn was about to return. And this time, he wasn't coming as a soldier following orders. He was coming as a father. The galaxy was about to remember why they had feared his name. He-Jin's combat suit fit perfectly, even after 15 years. The black material adjusted to his body, its systems coming online one by one. Status lights glowed softly in the dim barn as he checked each weapon. His movements were smooth and practiced, as if he had never stopped being the ghost. The tracking system showed Jaya's beacon moving off-planet. They had taken her to a ship. He-Jin's face remained calm, but his eyes had changed. They were no longer the eyes of a farmer. They were the eyes of a hunter. His emergency communication unit activated with a soft peep. Commander Yoon-hee Park's face appeared on the screen. She hadn't aged much in 15 years. "I hoped I would never have to make this call," she said. Her office at GDF headquarters looked exactly the same. "Jaya's emergency signal reached us 10 minutes ago. I've already started gathering intel." He-Jin checked his weapon's power cell. "Tell me." "The kidnappers are part of the Kryvex syndicate. They've been trying to get a foothold in this sector for months." Yoon-hee's fingers moved across her screen. "They think taking a colonist's daughter will force the colony to pay them protection money. They don't know who you are." The old man at the store. "Dead." Yoon-hee's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, He-jin. The local authorities are calling it a robbery gone wrong. He-jin closed his eyes for a moment. Mr. Kim had been kind to them since they arrived on Nova Eden. Another death he would add to the kidnapper's bill. I'm sending you everything we have on the syndicate's operations in this sector, Yoon-hee continued. But He-jin, things have changed since your time. The syndicate has new technology, new defenses. I've kept up with the changes, He-jin said quietly. He walked to another hidden panel in the barn wall. Inside was a collection of data chips, each containing information about criminal organizations, new weapons, and defense systems. He had never stopped preparing for this possibility. Of course you have. Yoon-hee almost smiled. The ship carrying Jaya is heading toward the outer rim. I'm transmitting their probable course now, but you'll need. I have a ship, He-jin interrupted. He pressed a button on his suit's control panel. Outside, the barn's floor began to slide open, revealing a sleek black spacecraft. Another thing he had kept ready, just in case. Yoon-hee nodded. The ghost's shadow. We wondered where that disappeared to. She looked directly at him through the screen. He-jin, the syndicate has thousands of members across hundreds of systems. Even you can't fight an entire criminal empire alone. I don't need to fight all of them. He-jin's voice was cold and certain. I just need to fight enough of them to get my daughter back, and to make sure they never think about coming near her again. He started loading equipment into the ship. Each piece had been maintained perfectly over the years, ready for this day. Weapons, scanning devices, and electronic countermeasures. All the tools that had made the Ghost legendary. The GDF can't officially help you, Yoon-hee said. But I've marked some names in the files I sent. People who owe you favors. People who remember what you did for them. Thank you. He-jin looked at his old friend. If I don't make it back, you'll make it back, Yoon-hee said firmly. And He-jin, make them regret ever hearing the name Lee. The communication ended. He-jin finished his preparations and climbed into the ship. As the engines powered up, he thought about the peaceful life he had built here. The garden, the farm, the quiet mornings with Jaya. All of it might be gone after this. But none of that mattered now. The ghost of Saturn was awake, and he had only one mission: bring his daughter home. The ghost's shadow moved silently through space, its stealth systems making it nearly invisible to normal sensors. He-jin sat in the pilot's seat, studying the data from Jaya's tracker. The kidnapper's ship had stopped at a space station in the Meridian system, a known meeting point for criminal groups. He-jin docked his ship at a distant port of the station. He moved through the crowded corridors like a shadow, his combat suit adjusted to look like ordinary clothes. No one noticed him. No one ever did until it was too late. In a busy bar, he found his first target. The man wore the subtle markings of a syndicate courier. He-jin sat down next to him, ordered a drink, and waited. 20 minutes later, they were alone in a quiet maintenance corridor. The girl from Nova Eden, He-jin said softly. Where did they take her? The courier tried to reach for his weapon. His hand never made it. He-jin's grip on his throat was gentle but impossible to break. The man's eyes widened as he realized he couldn't move. I don't know much, the courier gasped. They took her to the Red Star facility. It's where they keep valuable hostages. He-jin nodded and pressed a small device against the man's neck. The courier fell unconscious, and He-jin left him in a comfortable position. No need for unnecessary violence. Not yet. Back on his ship, He-jin studied the files Yoon-hee had sent him about the Red Star facility. It was a converted mining station, heavily guarded. The syndicate used it to hold important prisoners while negotiating ransoms. His computer beeped. Jaya's tracker had stopped moving. She was at the facility. He-jin allowed himself a small smile. His daughter was smart. She had managed to keep the tracker hidden all this time. The journey to Red Star took 6 hours. During that time, 3 syndicate operations on nearby planets suddenly went dark. No distress calls, no signs of fighting. They simply stopped communicating. At the first sight, security cameras caught a glimpse of a shadow moving through their vault before all their accounts were emptied and their files deleted. At the second sight, the guards found their entire weapon shipment had vanished, replaced by empty crates. Their communication system was destroyed, but so carefully that they didn't notice for hours. The third sight was a small base hidden on an asteroid. Its personnel were found sleeping peacefully, their security systems disabled, and their prisoner, a rival gang leader, missing. The only evidence was a single message on their main screen. "She's just a farmer's daughter. Let her go." In his ship, Ho-Jin received a message from Yoon-hee. The syndicate is starting to panic. They've lost 3 major operations in 6 hours. Some of their old-timers recognize the pattern. "Good," Ho-Jin replied. "They should remember. Their leader is asking questions about the girl, about Nova Eden. Then they'll find out soon." Ho-Jin checked his weapons, and they'll have a choice to make. The Red Star facility appeared on his sensors. It was large, with multiple defense systems and patrol ships. Ho-Jin began powering up his ship's special systems, equipment he had designed himself, things the syndicate had never seen before. "They've increased security at Red Star," Yoon-hee reported. "They're nervous." "They should be." Ho-Jin's voice was calm as he prepared for his attack. "Call me Ghost Dad." He had once joked to Jaya when she was little, after catching her trying to sneak cookies past him. Now the galaxy would learn why even the joke had made hardened soldiers nervous. The ghost's shadow moved closer to its target, carrying a father's determination and 15 years of prepared vengeance. The hunt was no longer beginning. It was about to end. Inside his private office on the Nest, Sang-Min Cho watched the reports coming in with growing concern. 3 major operations had gone silent. The pattern was familiar, but it couldn't be possible. Not after all these years. "Sir," his assistant's voice came through the comm. "You need to see this footage from the Nova Eden kidnapping." The security video from the hardware store played on his screen. Sang-Min leaned forward, studying the girl's movements as she fought back. The way she moved, her quick reactions, he had seen that training before. His face went pale. "Get me everything we have on the Lee family," he ordered. "Now." Minutes later, he stared at Ho-Jin Lee's file. The simple farmer's background check showed nothing unusual, but Sang-Min knew better. He had served in the Galactic Defense Force when the Ghost of Saturn was active. He had seen the aftermath of those missions. "We kidnapped the Ghost's daughter," he whispered. Then he started laughing, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "Of all the colonists on Nova Eden, we took the Ghost's daughter." His assistant shifted nervously. "Sir, should we release the girl?" "No." Sang-Min's eyes hardened. "The Ghost is 15 years out of practice. The Nest is the most secure facility in the sector. Even he can't break in here." He turned to his computer. "Increase security. I want every guard on alert. And move the girl to the high-security wing." In her cell in the Nest, Jaya sat quietly on her bed. The guards had been professional but nervous. They had moved her 3 times in the past day, each time to a more secure location. She smiled slightly, remembering her father's lessons about watching people's behavior. When people are scared, he had told her, they make mistakes. They show you what they fear. Jaya had kept her emergency beacon hidden in her hair tie, just as her father had taught her. She had memorized every turn and doorway they took her through. Most importantly, she had listened to the guards' whispered conversations. They were afraid of someone coming for her. At first, they had been confident, joking about the ransom they would get. Now they jumped at shadows. Something was happening out there, something that scared them. Back in his office, Sang-Min received another report. A weapons shipment had vanished without a trace. The Ghost was getting closer. Sang-Min remembered the old stories about Ho-Jin Lee, how he could appear anywhere, how no security system could stop him, how he never failed a mission. "Sir," his assistant interrupted his thoughts. "The prisoner transport ship Blackwind just went dark. All hands found unconscious. The ship's course had been altered to avoid our sector." Sangmin slammed his fist on the desk. "He's cutting off our escape routes, isolating us." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the asteroid field surrounding the nest. "Send a message to all outposts. Shoot to kill if you see anything suspicious. The ghost is not getting in here." But even as he gave the order, a cold feeling settled in his stomach. He had fought alongside He-Jin Lee once, years ago. He had seen what happened to people who threatened those the ghost protected. In the distance, a small shadow moved between the asteroids, getting closer to the nest. Inside it, He-Jin prepared his infiltration gear. The time for subtle warnings was over. The ghost of Saturn was done playing games. Sangmin's pride had made him keep Jada instead of releasing her. Now he would learn why taking the ghost's daughter was the biggest mistake of his life. Lieutenant Min Seo Kim walked through the high-security wing of the nest, her security badge marking her as a senior officer of the Kryvex Syndicate. She stopped at Jaya's cell and dismissed the guards. As soon as they left, she turned off the security cameras. "Your father is coming," Min Seo said quietly to Jaya. "But Sangmin has set a trap. He has placed explosives throughout the station. If your father is detected, Sangmin will destroy the nest with everyone inside." Jaya studied the woman carefully. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because 15 years ago, your father saved my sister from pirates when the GDF had abandoned the mission." Min Seo's eyes were serious. "I never forgot that. I joined the syndicate to find dirt on them, help take them down from inside. Now I have a chance to repay my debt." Jaya nodded slowly. Her father had taught her to recognize when people were telling the truth. "What do you need me to do?" "Keep gathering information like you have been. I've noticed you mapping the station in your head." Min Seo smiled slightly. "I'll get you details about the security systems and guard rotations. When your father arrives, you'll need to be ready to move." In space near the nest, He-Jin received an encrypted message from Commander Yuni. "One of our deep cover agents has made contact with Jada. Lieutenant Min Seo Kim. She can be trusted." He-Jin remembered the rescue mission from 15 years ago. The little girl he had saved from the pirates. Now she was helping save his daughter. The galaxy worked in strange ways sometimes. Inside the nest, Jaya continued her careful observation. She noted when the guards changed shifts, which ones were careful and which ones were lazy. She memorized the keypad sounds when they entered codes. Every detail could help her father. Min Seo brought her meals personally now. With each visit, she passed on new information. The location of security sensors, the patterns of patrol ships, the blind spots in the asteroid field where a small ship could hide. "Sangmin is getting desperate," Min Seo reported during one visit. "He hasn't slept in days. He keeps watching old mission reports about your father. The stories about the ghost are spreading through the station. Many guards are asking to transfer out." Jaya smiled. Her father had taught her about fear as a weapon. "The ghost is just a shadow," he had said. "But sometimes a shadow can be more frightening than any real thing." In his office, Sangmin watched his security forces slowly unravel. Every unexplained noise made them jump. Every system glitch caused panic. They were waiting for a ghost to appear, and that wait was destroying their nerves. "Check every worker's background again," he ordered his assistant. The ghost could be disguised as anyone. He could already be inside. But He-Jin wasn't inside. Not yet. He was waiting in the asteroid field, receiving detailed intelligence from Min Seo through Commander Yuni. Every minute made his plan more complete, his attack more certain. Most importantly, his daughter was safe and preparing for his arrival. Jia had proven herself to be truly his daughter, patient, observant, and ready to act when the moment came. The ghost's revenge was coming. But first, he would make sure his daughter had every advantage when the fighting started. After all, The best rescue wasn't just about getting in. It was about making sure everyone you cared about got out alive. The first sign that something was wrong came when the nest's outer sensors went dark. The security team thought it was a simple malfunction. By the time they realized their mistake, the ghost was already inside. He-Jin moved through the maintenance tunnels like a shadow. His combat suit's sensors showed him every guard's position, thanks to the detailed maps Min-Seo had provided. He had disabled the station's alert systems first, just as he had done countless times during his GDF missions. In the security center, operators stared at their screens in confusion. Systems were shutting down one by one, not dramatically, but quietly, as if they were being turned off for routine maintenance. By the time anyone noticed a pattern, it was too late to stop it. "He's here," Sang-min whispered in his office, watching his security network collapse. He reached for the controls to trigger the explosives, but nothing happened. The detonation codes had been erased from the system. Min-Seo had done her work well. Over the past days, she had quietly removed all the explosives while updating Jaya on every change in security. Now she stood in the high-security wing, watching the guards run past her towards another false alarm. He-Jin encountered his first real resistance at the entrance to the prison section. 6 guards, all well-trained. They never saw him. A quiet hiss from his suit filled the corridor with sleeping gas. He caught each guard as they fell, laying them down gently. The ghost didn't need to kill when there were better options. "All guards to the main hangar," Sang-min's voice echoed through the station. "Protect the escape ships at all costs." He knew it was useless. The ghost had probably already disabled every ship on the station. In her cell, Jaya heard the chaos growing outside. She sat calmly on her bed, waiting. Her father had taught her that patience was as important as action. The emergency beacon in her hair tie was still transmitting, helping guide her father through the station. He-Jin reached the high-security wing just as Min-Seo finished disabling the last security door. She nodded to him once and pointed to Jaya's cell. No words were needed. The cell door opened silently. Jaya looked up and smiled at her father. "You're late," she said quietly. "Traffic was bad," He-Jin replied. His voice warmed despite the helmet's filters. He handed her a small weapon, ready to go home. Before Jaya could answer, alarms finally began to sound. Sang-min had triggered the manual emergency systems. Guards were heading their way from all directions. "Time to move," Min-Seo said, checking her own weapon. "I've cleared the path to Docking Bay 3. Your ship is waiting there." They moved through the station like ghosts themselves, Jaya proving that her father's training had not been wasted. When guards appeared, He-Jin's non-lethal weapons put them to sleep before they could raise their weapons. "Stop them." Sang-min's voice was desperate now. "The ghost is escaping with the girl. Don't let them reach the docking bay." But no one could stop them. The ghost's reputation had grown so terrifying over the past days that most guards dove for cover as soon as they saw his shadow. Those who did try to fight found their weapons wouldn't fire. He-Jin had sabotaged the station's entire weapons inventory hours ago. The ghost's shadow waited in Docking Bay 3, its engines already running. Freedom was just steps away, but He-Jin knew Sang-min too well to think it would be that easy. The real fight was still to come. The docking bay doors began to close just as He-Jin, Jaya, and Min-Seo reached them. Sang-min stood at the control panel, holding an old-style projectile weapon that He-Jin's sabotage couldn't affect. "The famous ghost of Saturn," Sang-min said, his voice echoing in the large space. "You're just as good as the stories say. But this ends here." He-Jin pushed Jaya behind him, but she moved to stand beside him instead. The ghost's shadow waited just beyond the slowly closing doors, their escape so close yet so far. "You lost this fight before it began," He-Jin said quietly. "You just didn't know it." Sang-min laughed, but his hand shook slightly. "I have the only working weapon on this station. Your ship will never make it through those doors in time. It's over." "You're wrong about both things," Jaya said calmly. During her captivity, she had watched the docking bay doors, counting the seconds they took to close. She knew they had enough time. Min Seo moved like lightning, throwing a small device at Sangmin's feet. Smoke filled the area around him. He fired blindly, but his shots went wide. He-Jin didn't move toward Sangmin. Instead, he pressed a button on his suit. All around the station, the backup power systems he had reprogrammed activated. Every door on the nest opened at once. The docking bay doors reversed, opening fully. How? Sangmin stumbled back, trying to see through the smoke. The systems were isolated. You remembered the ghost, He-Jin said, walking forward. But you forgot I was a father first. I spent 15 years preparing to protect my daughter. Did you think I wouldn't learn every new security system, every possible threat? Jaya moved to the control panel, her fingers flying over the keys just as she had practiced in her mind during her captivity. The station's computers responded to code she had memorized from watching the guards. Sangmin raised his weapon again, but Min Seo was faster. A perfect shot knocked the gun from his hand. He fell to his knees, finally understanding how completely he had been defeated. The Syndicate will hunt you, he warned. No, Min Seo said, they won't. She held up a data chip. I sent proof of your illegal operations to every major crime family. Your private deals, your betrayals. You've lost everything. He-Jin looked at his old colleague from the GDF. You chose the wrong path, Sangmin, but you can still make better choices. Alarms began blaring throughout the station. The disruption to the power systems had started a chain reaction. The nest would not be destroyed, but it would need to be evacuated. Time to go, Jaya said, already heading for the ship. He-Jin followed her, leaving Min Seo to deal with Sangmin. The lieutenant had her own plans for bringing down the Syndicate from within. Inside the ghost's shadow, Jaya took the co-pilot's seat naturally. You changed the ship's controls, she noticed. They matched the simulator programs you made me practice with. A father plans ahead, He-Jin said simply, starting the launch sequence. As they flew away from the nest, they watched escape pods launching from the station. He-Jin's attack had ended without a single death, but the Syndicate's power in this sector was broken. Can we still grow tomatoes after all this? Jaya asked as they set course for Nova Eden. He-Jin removed his helmet and smiled at his daughter. We can do whatever you want, but maybe we'll install better security for the garden. I'd like that, Jaya said. And Dad, thanks for coming for me. Always, He-Jin replied. The ghost of Saturn had completed his last mission. Now it was time to go home and be a father again.